The air crackled with tension. Magic hung heavy in the shadows, and Noah could feel it, the pulse of power vibrating through his fingertips. His heart raced, the weight of destiny pressing on his chest like 1,000 suns. Every breath was a struggle, as though the very air around him conspired to keep him from the truth. He'd always known he was different, but this was beyond anything he could have imagined. The woman who stood before him, a stranger yet not, held the key to everything he feared. Her gaze pierced through him, her eyes the color of storms, and with every second, he felt the invisible thread between them tighten. But what did it mean? Was it love, or something far more dangerous? He couldn't answer that, not yet. His body trembled, heart caught between two worlds. The danger was real, and he knew, with every beat of his heart, that stepping closer to her might be the end of him. Or perhaps, the beginning. The silence hung between them like a heavy cloak, suffocating. Noah's heart raced, the world around him narrowing to just Hannah and the powerful magic that tied them together. His breath was shallow, filled with uncertainty and fear. His goal, to understand what was happening, felt more impossible with each passing second. How had they come to this? His mind raced, but his feet remained rooted to the ground. The air around them hummed, the magic like a living thing that could not be ignored. Hannah's eyes, though dark with secrets, held a kindness he couldn't ignore. Still, the fear in her gaze unsettled him. This connection? What did it mean for them both? Was it a blessing or a curse? The silence stretched on, broken only by the faint hum of power in the air. And then, just as Noah took a step forward, he felt the energy shift. Something was coming. He could feel it in his bones. Noah couldn't look away. Her presence was magnetic, and the strange power she held seemed to draw him in like a moth to a flame. Every step he took felt like a step into the unknown, into a world he wasn't prepared for. The deeper he moved into the forest, the more intense the magic became. It wrapped around him, pulling him closer to Hannah, to the heart of the mystery. But with every step, the uncertainty grew. Was he ready for this? Did he even have a choice? He stopped just short of her, his chest rising and falling as if he'd been holding his breath since the moment they met. The air felt charged now, as though the forest itself was waiting for them to make the next move. He looked into Hannah's eyes, searching for something, anything, that could tell him what he was meant to do. But her gaze held no answers, only more questions. There was a moment, just before the tension broke, when Noah realized how much he was willing to risk. He knew he had been walking towards something dangerous, but now, it was too late to turn back. The connection between him and Hannah had grown too strong. A strange mix of fear and desire pulsed in his chest, twisting his insides. He wasn't sure which one was stronger, but he knew that whatever happened next would change everything. His gaze never left her, and he could feel the weight of the world pressing down on them both. In the distance, he heard a rustle in the trees, but it was barely a whisper against the noise in his mind. His heart thudded in his chest as he reached out, unsure if she would pull away or step forward. He held his breath, waiting. With the weight of their shared gaze, Noah felt the world shift. This moment, this connection, was something beyond understanding. His heart raced as he moved closer to Hannah, drawn by forces he couldn't explain, but felt with every fiber of his being. The magical energy between them surged, alive, as if it recognized their bond. The forest around them seemed to hold its breath, watching, waiting. He had no idea what he was doing, only that he couldn't stop. He wanted to believe that love could be this powerful, but the fear gnawed at him, reminding him that this magic was dangerous. They were standing on the edge of something far more dangerous than either of them could comprehend. Could they stop it? Could they even control it? Or had they already crossed the point of no return? forest was alive with sound. The rustle of leaves, the crack of branches underfoot. Noah's heart hammered in his chest as he sprinted through the trees, his breath ragged and urgent. Behind him, footsteps pounded, too close for comfort. Hannah's voice cut through the chaos. "We can't outrun them, Noah." She was breathless, fear lacing her tone. But Noah didn't dare stop. They had no choice now. The chase had begun, and if they didn't keep moving, they'd never get out. The moonlight was barely enough to guide them, the thick shadows cast by the trees playing tricks on his mind. His mind raced too. What did Michael want with them? Why was this happening? He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being led into a trap. Hannah stumbled, her foot catching on a hidden root. Noah's instinct kicked in. He reached for her, his hand steadying her as they continued running. But the pull of the forest seemed stronger now, as if it were rejecting them. They couldn't stop, not yet. Not until they had answers, but the fear gnawing at him was undeniable. They were running out of time. They found a brief moment of refuge near a small creek, the sound of rushing water filling the silence. The chase had stopped, but the tension lingered, thick in the air. Noah collapsed against a tree, his breathing ragged, while Hannah paced nearby. The quiet was jarring, too quiet after the frantic rush. He looked at her, the exhaustion on her face mirroring his own. "We can't keep running forever," he muttered, his voice hoarse. Hannah shot him a quick glance. "We don't have a choice," she said, her tone sharp. But Noah could hear the doubt in her voice, even if she tried to hide it. The moonlight filtered through the branches above, casting a soft glow on them. There was no place safe anymore. Not from Michael. Not from whatever was pulling them deeper into this nightmare. "Do you trust me?" Noah asked, his voice quieter now, full of uncertainty. Hannah paused, her eyes meeting his. For a moment, it was just the two of them, the forest and everything else forgotten. But then her face hardened again. "I don't know anymore." Noah had barely caught his breath when the shadows in the distance began to shift. Michael emerged from the trees, his figure tall and imposing. A dark, almost predatory aura surrounded him, making the air grow heavier. Hannah stiffened, but Noah didn't move. There was no use running anymore. Michael smirked, his eyes glinting in the dim light. "Thought you could outrun me?" he asked, his voice smooth, dripping with confidence. Noah stood, tension rippling through his muscles, but Hannah stepped forward, her hand outstretched. "What do you want from us?" she demanded. Michael didn't answer immediately, his gaze flicking over both of them, as if appraising their worth. "Everything," he finally said, his tone cold. The forest seemed to quiet, holding its breath, as if waiting for something terrible to unfold. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air, and Noah's stomach twisted with the realization that they were no longer in control. Michael had all the power now. The sound of footsteps on the dirt path was the only noise as they made their way through the dense forest. The tension had not eased, but it was different now, quieter, almost like the calm before a storm. Noah felt the weight of the silence settle around him, but his thoughts were interrupted by the voice that had become a steady presence in his life. The old mage, his mentor, had caught up with them. "You've made a dangerous choice, Noah," he said, his voice low and filled with warning. "The path you walk now leads only to one thing: destruction." Noah turned to face him, his expression hard. "I didn't ask for any of this," he muttered, his voice tinged with frustration. "Then you will learn the cost," the old mage replied, his eyes dark with regret. The wisdom in his tone was undeniable, but Noah couldn't afford to listen. He had already made his decision. "What now?" Noah asked, his voice weary but resolute. "You must choose, and quickly," the mentor warned, his gaze growing more intense. "The magic inside you is awakening, and it will either save or destroy you." Noah stood at the edge of the clearing, the decision burning in his chest. The weight of everything they had learned, everything they had lost, pressed down on him. Hannah was beside him, but even her presence couldn't ease the storm inside him. He glanced at her, but she didn't speak. She didn't need to. The silence between them said everything. The time for hesitation had passed. They had no choice but to act. "We'll find out what this all means," Noah whispered, his voice determined. "I'm not running anymore." Hannah met his gaze. Her eyes filled with both fear and resolve. "Then we fight," she said, her voice steady, but tinged with uncertainty. They were both aware of the consequences, but they had no choice now. The chase had begun, and there was no turning back. With a final glance at the forest ahead, Noah set off, the sound of his footsteps the only thing breaking the heavy silence. The sun was beginning to set, painting the sky with warm hues of orange and pink. The forest, now bathed in the gentle light of dusk, felt peaceful, but beneath the tranquility, something was off. Noah glanced over at Michael, who had appeared at their camp in the fading light. His smile seemed too wide, his eyes too calm. "You've made the right choice, Noah," he said, his voice smooth. But there was an edge to it. It was hard to place, but Noah could feel it. Hannah stiffened beside him, her eyes flicking from Michael to Noah as if searching for a sign. The crackling of the fire seemed louder than usual, the warmth from it now feeling like an illusion. Noah hesitated before speaking, his voice cautious. "And you're sure it's safe?" Michael's grin never faltered. "Absolutely." But there was something in the way he said it, a lingering doubt Noah couldn't shake. It didn't feel like safety. It felt like a trap waiting to close. As the wind rustled through the trees, the first inkling of danger slid to Noah's chest. Something wasn't right. Later, as the fire sputtered out, the forest around them grew quiet. Noah could hear the steady rhythm of his heart, matching the calm that had settled between him and Hannah. She sat beside him, the flickering firelight casting soft shadows on her face. "Do you trust him?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Noah hesitated, his fingers tracing the edge of his cloak. "I don't know," he replied honestly, the weight of uncertainty heavy in his voice. The silence stretched, but it was different now. It was comfortable, yet layered with tension. Hannah reached for his hand, her fingers brushing his. "We need to be careful," she said, her voice soft but insistent. "This all feels wrong." He nodded, squeezing her hand gently. The warmth of her touch grounded him for a moment, but deep down, a gnawing doubt refused to leave. Was Michael hiding something? And if he was, what was it that he was after? The question lingered between them, unspoken, as the last embers of the fire died. The next day, the air was thick with tension. As they trekked deeper into the forest, Noah caught sight of a figure in the distance, a tall, dark silhouette moving swiftly between the trees. Michael had disappeared into the woods, and now they were alone with the eerie silence. Hannah's voice cut through the stillness. "What if we were wrong?" she asked, her words heavy with doubt. Noah paused, his eyes narrowing as he turned to face her. "Wrong about what?" Her gaze flickered away, but not before Noah saw the flicker of uncertainty. About trusting him. Noah felt the weight of her words. The idea had been nagging at him for days, but hearing it aloud made it real. Michael had always seemed too perfect, too helpful. A part of Noah wanted to dismiss it, to move forward. But another part of him, the part that had begun to distrust the world around him, wondered if Michael was hiding more than he let on. A sharp gust of wind rustled the leaves, cutting through the silence. Noah swallowed hard, his instincts telling him to trust no one, not even those closest to him. It happened in an instant. One moment, Noah was walking alongside Hannah, and the next he was thrown backward, crashing into the ground with a sharp pain in his chest. The sound of footsteps echoed in the distance, and Michael's voice rang out. Too calm, too cold. "You should have trusted me, Noah," he said, his words slicing through the air like a blade. Noah struggled to his feet, disbelief flooding his veins. Michael had betrayed them. He had lured them here, played them like pawns. "Why?" Noah gasped, his voice raw. But Michael only smiled, a cruel twist of his lips. "Because I always knew you'd be the one to bring them to me. And now, you've done just that." Before Noah could react, Michael raised his hand, a blast of dark energy surging toward him. Hannah screamed, her voice full of horror, but it was too late. The force of the attack sent Noah crashing to the ground, his vision blurring. Betrayed, heartbroken. There was no going back now. Noah lay still, the pain in his body sharp and unforgiving. But the emotional pain was worse. Betrayed by Michael, the one person he had trusted most. The words echoed in his mind, but his thoughts were too disjointed to focus. Hannah's voice came from above him, shaking with fear. "Noah, wake up, please." But it was no use. The damage was done. His mind reeled, trying to piece together the puzzle of betrayal, but everything was fractured. He had been used. They both had. As the world around him began to fade, Noah realized something crucial. He had no choice now but to fight back. He couldn't let Michael win. With a painful grunt, he pushed himself to his feet, his body protesting. Hannah stepped closer, her face pale but determined. "What now?" she asked, her voice steadier than before. Noah's eyes hardened, a new resolve hardening in his chest. "We end this." The silence of the forest felt oppressive as Noah sat by the remnants of the dying fire. The sounds of the world seemed muted, as if the earth itself held its breath. His mind churned with the events of the past few days. The betrayal, the lies, the broken trust. What had he missed? The clues had been there all along, hidden in plain sight. Michael had always been too calm, too perfect. Hannah, he glanced over at her. She too seemed distant, her eyes clouded with something unsaid. The warmth of the fire flickered, casting long shadows that danced on their faces. Noah's gaze shifted to the dark woods beyond, the trees now eerily still. Everything had led to this moment, and yet it felt like a false dawn. His chest tightened with a growing realization. The truth had been buried under layers of deception, and now it was rising. The first hint of what lay ahead tugged at his thoughts, a dangerous truth, just out of reach but undeniable. A memory resurfaced unbidden. Noah could hear the faint whispers of Michael's voice from earlier in their journey. How they had first met, how he had offered them help with such ease, as though it had all been planned. The woods, the magic, the dangers, all seemingly orchestrated. Noah could feel the chilling connection now, as if his past actions were being revealed piece by piece. The scent of earth and pine, the rustle of leaves, all felt like echoes of something darker. He remembered Hannah's trust in Michael, how she had relied on him, believing he was a protector. But now, the realization was clear. The man they had followed, the one they had trusted, had been pulling the strings all along. A chill ran down Noah's spine as the pieces of the puzzle fell into place. It had been him, Michael, who had guided them here to this point. The lies had been his from the beginning. The truth hit like a sharp blow, and for a moment everything stopped. Noah stood, his movements slow but deliberate as he turned to face Michael, who stood just a few paces away, watching him with an unsettling calm. The air between them was thick, filled with the weight of unspoken truths. "You knew all along," Noah said, his voice barely a whisper, as though speaking louder would shatter the fragile calm. Michael didn't respond immediately, his eyes fixed on Noah, the faintest of smiles playing on his lips. "You don't understand yet," he finally said, his tone cold but not unkind. Noah's fists clenched. "Then tell me," he snapped, stepping forward, the words sharper now. Michael tilted his head, his expression one of mild amusement. "It's too late for you to understand, Noah. You've already made your choice." The words hit like a punch, and for a moment, Noah felt as though the ground had shifted beneath him. Was it all a game to him? His heartbeat quickened, the pressure in his chest unbearable. The truth had come, and with it, a force that neither he nor Hannah could have foreseen. Michael's voice dropped to a whisper, but the words cut deeper than any sword could. "You never asked the right questions, Noah," he said, his tone both calm and knowing. "You've been chasing a false truth. All along, I've been leading you to this moment." Noah's chest tightened as the realization hit. The world around him seemed to tilt, his thoughts spiraling. Michael was not the man he thought he was. He wasn't here to help them. He had been here to manipulate them. "Why?" Noah choked out, the question escaping before he could stop it. Michael took a step forward, his expression unchanging. "Because it was always you, Noah. You and Hannah are the key. This world needs to be reset, and you were chosen." The words hung in the air, suffocating Noah. The truth was unbearable. Michael had never been their ally. He was the architect of everything. Noah's world shattered in that instant. Noah stood at the edge of the clearing, the night swallowing him whole. Everything he had known was gone. The betrayal had been too much to bear, but in its wake something had changed. He wasn't the same person who had entered the forest days ago. He had seen the truth now, raw and unrelenting. The burden of it settled in his chest, heavy but necessary. "So this was the truth all along," he whispered, more to himself than to anyone else. Hannah stepped beside him, her hand resting gently on his arm. She didn't speak, but her presence was enough. For the first time, Noah felt something stir inside him. A sense of clarity, a spark of power. The lies had stripped him bare, but now there was nothing left to hide. He was ready to face whatever came next. The world had changed, and so had he. The air was thick with tension, every breath ragged. Noah could hear footsteps closing in, the sound of something drawing nearer. The rustling of leaves in the wind was the only thing that masked the sound of his heart pounding in his chest. The camp was eerily quiet, and the flickering of the remaining fire cast long, distorted shadows around him. He stood, hands clenched at his sides, ready. Michael was coming. The world seemed to hold its breath. Hannah stood a few paces behind him, her eyes scanning the trees. Noah could feel the ground beneath him trembling. The silence was the calm before the storm. No words were exchanged. They didn't need to be. The moment was imminent. Their entire journey had led to this confrontation. Noah's body tensed, adrenaline rushing through his veins. Something would break tonight, and he knew it was either them or him. Then the silence shattered. Michael stepped into the clearing, his face calm, almost serene, but there was an unsettling energy about him. He looked at them, his eyes cold. "You've come so far, but you still don't understand, do you?" His voice was smooth, full of conviction. "I've given you every chance to turn back, but now it's too late." Noah took a step forward, his voice low but firm. "Why? Why do this?" Michael's lips curled into a small, knowing smile. "Because you've always been the key. You and Hannah." His words hit like a blow. "I never wanted this for you, but you forced my hand." The air crackled with tension, and Noah could feel it building. He reached for his magic, but it felt distant, uncertain. A deep anger surged through him. "No more games," Noah snarled. And in an instant, he unleashed his power. The clash was violent. Sparks flew as Noah's magic collided with Michael's. Energy crackled, lighting up the night as they exchanged blow after blow. But amid the chaos, Noah saw something. Hannah, her face filled with pain, standing in the path of their battle. Before he could react, Michael turned, and in one swift movement, he pushed Hannah aside. She fell to the ground, her cry echoing in the clearing. Time seemed to slow as Noah's heart shattered. He raced to her, his magic faltering, but the damage was done. Hannah lay there, weak and gasping for breath. "No," Noah whispered, kneeling beside her. Tears filled his eyes, the weight of what he had just witnessed sinking in. She had paid the price, and now there was no turning back. Noah's fury boiled over. The world around him seemed to blur as he focused entirely on Michael. His voice was raw, filled with pain and rage. "This ends now." Michael's smile never wavered. "You think you've won? You think this will stop me?" His voice was calm, almost amused. "You're too late, Noah. The world is already in motion. You can't change it now." The intensity of the battle grew as their powers collided once more, each one more devastating than the last. But Noah wasn't listening to Michael anymore. His thoughts were consumed by one thing, the truth. The truth that had been buried deep within him all this time. It wasn't just about magic. It wasn't about Michael or his manipulation. It was about them, all of them. And the realization hit hard. There was no saving this world. There was only survival. The battle ended in silence. The storm of magic had faded, leaving only the crackling of the fire and the sound of Noah's breathing. He stood battered and broken, his hands shaking at his sides. The weight of the fight had drained him, but he had won. The world was still here, and yet it felt different. He looked down at Hannah, who had managed to sit up, her face pale, but her eyes clear. They had both lost so much, but there was a quiet resolve in her gaze. "We did it," she whispered, her voice hoarse, but Noah knew it wasn't over. It had only just begun. "No," he said quietly, his voice filled with a somber understanding. "The battle was won, but the war that's just begun." And with that, they both turned toward the horizon, ready to face whatever came next. The silence that followed the chaos was suffocating. Smoke curled up into the sky, twisting and dissipating into the cool air. The forest was still. The only sounds, the occasional crack of burning wood and the soft rustle of leaves. Noah stood alone, his back to the smoldering remains of the fire, his hands still trembling. The world around him seemed muted, distant, as if he were in a dream. The weight of everything that had happened pressed down on him. Hannah's voice, distant and soft, broke the silence. "We made it through, but at what cost?" He didn't answer. His chest felt heavy and his throat ached. The world felt different now, like it had shifted into a new phase. The loss was palpable, but the truth of what had happened still hadn't fully sunk in. He turned to face the remnants of the battle. There was nothing left but the wreckage of his past. What remained was the uncertainty of what came next. Noah sat down slowly, his body aching. But it was the emotional exhaustion that weighed him down most. His mind replayed the events of the past days. The betrayals, the revelations, the sacrifices. He could feel the ghosts of those who had been lost, like whispers on the wind. Michael's words echoed in his head. "You were the key," the man had said. Was he really? Or had he been manipulated all along? The weight of it all pressed against him, threatening to crush him under the burden of knowing the truth. The world was forever changed. His thoughts shifted to Hannah, sitting quietly by his side. Her presence was a comfort, but even she couldn't fill the emptiness inside him. The silence between them was heavy, filled with memories, and yet there was a sense of acceptance now. Life would continue, but it would never be the same. The wind shifted, and Noah turned to see Michael standing in the distance. But this time, He didn't look like the man who had betrayed them. The shadows seemed to swallow him, but Noah could see the weariness in his posture. Hannah stiffened beside him, but Noah held up his hand. He wasn't sure what this meant, but there was a strange peace in the air. Michael approached slowly, his face showing the signs of battle, yet there was no malice in his gaze now. "I failed you both," he said quietly, his voice filled with remorse. "I thought I was protecting you, but I see now what I've done." Noah didn't speak at first. The words were too heavy to say. Instead, he simply nodded, acknowledging the brokenness of the man who stood before him. Hannah's hand rested on his arm, her touch a reminder that even in this moment, there was still something left worth fighting for. The forest was silent, but Noah's mind was filled with echoes of lessons past. He could hear the words of his mentor, long since gone. "The truth will always find you, but sometimes it comes at a cost." Those words had haunted him, and now they rang true. His mentor had seen it all before, understood the cost of the knowledge they had pursued. Noah's thoughts drifted to those lessons of power, sacrifice, and the price of truth. His mentor's wisdom had prepared him for moments like this, but no one could truly be ready for the weight of such realizations. The cost was heavy, but it had led him to this moment of clarity. The path forward was uncertain, but one thing was clear: he had to keep moving forward. The past was gone, and the future was unwritten. Noah stood in the clearing, the weight of everything that had happened settling around him like a cloak. The world had shifted, and he could feel it. There was no going back now, but in the stillness he found something he hadn't expected: peace. He looked at Hannah, who stood beside him, her eyes steady and filled with quiet strength. "We've made it through," she said softly. "But this is not the end." Noah nodded slowly, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. He had no answers, no clear path ahead. But for the first time in a long time, he didn't feel the weight of the world pressing on him. It was a new beginning. "It's a new dawn," he whispered, his voice filled with quiet determination. And with that, he stepped forward, ready to face whatever came next. The air was still, as though the world itself had paused to reflect. The battle had long ended, but the weight of everything that had transpired hung heavily. Smoke drifted lazily upward, the last traces of a war that had left nothing but ash. Noah stood in the clearing, his eyes focused on the horizon, where the first light of dawn began to break through the trees. Hannah stood beside him, her silence matching his. The world had changed. They had changed. The cost of the truth was heavier than they could have imagined. Everything had been torn apart, and in its place, only emptiness remained. What had they fought for? What had they lost? The question lingered in Noah's mind, but there was no answer. It didn't matter now. What was lost was gone. All that remained was the quiet, the stillness, and the uncertain road ahead. Was it worth it? Only time would tell. Noah turned away from the clearing, the weight of the past settling deeper into his bones. Hannah followed him, her steps light but purposeful. The world seemed to be moving forward, as if nothing had ever happened. Yet they both knew better. They walked together, side by side, neither of them speaking. The path ahead was uncertain, and they didn't have the answers. But they had each other. For now, that was enough. The sun had risen fully now, casting a golden light on the world that had once been their battleground. Now it felt like a place of healing, or at least of quiet recovery. They didn't need to look back. They simply needed to move forward. There was no need for words. Their actions would speak louder than anything they could say. A voice echoed softly in Noah's mind, a memory of the past. His mentor, long gone, speaking those final words: "The truth is heavy, but it's the only way to truly live." The memory of his mentor's wisdom lingered in his heart, guiding him now in this quiet aftermath. He could feel the weight of the lessons learned, but they were no longer burdens. They were the foundation upon which he stood. He had come through the fire, and though scarred, he had emerged with the knowledge to carry on. He paused for a moment, the memory washing over him, before the gentle pull of the present nudged him forward. The past was gone, but its lessons would remain. Time moved on. The world, now in the quiet aftermath of the battle, began to find its rhythm again. The sun rose higher, and the sounds of nature returned, filling the air with life. Noah and Hannah continued their journey, their steps slower now, more deliberate. They passed through villages where life went on, as it always had. The people they met were unaware of the war that had raged so close to them. And yet Noah and Hannah both carried the weight of what had happened. They didn't speak of it, not yet. They simply moved forward. They were different now, but the world in its infinite way had a way of healing. It was a new day, and with it, the possibility of a future. Noah paused by the edge of a stream, watching the water flow silently past. He felt the quiet settling within him, the stillness a welcome change from the chaos that had consumed his life. The truth had come, and now he understood. The pain, the loss, it was part of the journey, but there was also strength, resilience, and the possibility of redemption. It was worth it, he whispered, his voice barely audible, but filled with conviction. Hannah stood beside him, her gaze soft, understanding. No more words were needed. The journey had ended, but something had begun within him. The past was no longer a weight. It was a part of him, and he had found peace.